Welcome back to Nick Lenz's Comic Corner, classic slash known classics. This is episode number 1571 and Doubleshot number 1665. Now, the first trade here is a complete collection of a whole volume. The other one is a finale for a volume. Alright, first up it is Wolverine, Death of Wolverine Prelude, 3 Months to Die. Excuse me. All the issues in this book, well, the main volume, of course, this 12-issue volume, is written by Paul Cornell. Yep, he is the writer of this book. He does not write the annual in this book. Yes, this volume had an annual come out. And that story was basically just A Wolf and the Cub. It was basically just a story with Wolverine and Joan Bailey, which I thought was a really good story. And of course, you have 75th anniversary celebration. We have a story done by Wolverine, one of Wolverine's co-creators, the late Lee Wein, but art by Paul Gulacy. Now, the artwork for the main book, for Wolverine Volume 6, this was 6th volume for the series when it was published. Because the original volume was the Chris Claremont run, and then you had the long 180 issue run that started back in 1988 and concluded in 2003. It was relaunched every year with Greg Rucka. That volume lasted, well, numbering-wise, for 90 issues, despite the fact that with issue 75, they had Doc take over the book. But it was still kind of part of the numbering. And then you have Volume 4, launched in 2010, concluded in 2011, after 20 issues. And then, of course, you had renumbered to 300 afterwards. And then 17 issues later, we had the restart button again with the book. Just no less than 2 years after he just hit 300. Seemed like, anyways. And that volume lasted for 13 issues. And that was the first of 2 straight volumes done by Paul Cornell. I will be discussing in the future. Now, this volume itself is simple what happened after that volume. You see, at the end of that previous volume, Wolverine got a scar over his eye, and it could not heal. The reason is because in the previous volume of this particular series, Wolverine lost his healing factor. And this was an interesting idea Marvel had for the character. Probably one of the more... because this is probably the most newest idea Marvel gave to the character since it made him a father. Yep. Because apparently Marvel thought it would be a good idea to kill off Marvel. And this... Marvel thought to kill off Wolverine. And this was a saga that was told over, of course, a period of 2 years. Started in 2012, wrapped up in 2014. And in these issues, you have Wolverine wearing this armor. Now, I should point out something about the very first issue. I remember when this came out, there was a viewer who actually saw this cover and absolutely hated it. Because Wolverine carrying a gun is not exactly a good idea. The first story is called Rogue Logan. Well, Wolverine gets this brand spanking new costume, which, by the way, he does make one appearance outside of this book wearing this outfit, and that was an issue of Miss Marvel. Yep. And this is an armor he has to wear because he has no healing factor. And also, it comes with its own claws. Because here's the interesting thing they kind of revealed in the previous volume of the series. Whenever he put away those claws, those marks for his hands, because in the comics it comes up from the top of his hands, in the movies it comes between his knuckles, and every time he put the claws away, the wounds would automatically heal thanks to his healing factor. And whenever he did it currently, he could still pop up the claws, no problem, except that with the healing factor, those wounds become infected, and so later on he started wearing bandages over his hands. And thanks to his suit, he didn't have to pop his claws whenever he didn't feel like it. And here's in the second issue of this run, he ran into the Superior Spider-Man. And you're thinking, really? He did? Yes, seriously, he did. Yeah, for some reason, they thought it would be a good idea for him to run into the Superior Spider-Man for an issue, where he does study him for a while. At one point, get this, he throws him off a building, and he does catch him. Don't worry about that. Yep. Throws off a building, does catch him. And This basically also involves working for a corporation where it's run by a guy known as Offer, who gives him this suit. And he has this suit throughout the entire run into the final issue when he finally takes it off. And also in these issues, now this is not affected in the main Wolverine X book, which was published the same time this book has been published. Excuse me. Where that basically he became estranged from the X-Men. He pretty much quit. And also his relationship with Storm had abruptly ended. Yeah, he left and did his undercover work in this corporation, started a relationship with another woman, and when she found out he was undercover, the relationship ended. Yep. And that's kind of what happens. And of course, the reason here he is with the Superior Spider-Man. Yes. Now, a lot of people did not like this whole idea of Superior Spider-Man. It was a rumor I heard several years ago that fans were giving Dan Slott death threats over this. And there was even a possible theory I heard, someone threatened to burn down Dan Slott's house over this. Over having the body swap happen in the final few issues of Amazing Spider-Man, well, with issue 700, because it was so controversial. People hated that issue. And I had not seen so much hatred for a single issue of Amazing Spider-Man since One More Day. And the one thing interesting, though, you can say about the Superior Spider-Man here, I mean, it's a book he pops up in that is not written by Dan Slott. And he's written to be a pretty reasonable person. This is actually one of the very few books he was popping up in, because this is something I thought was really, I don't know if it's odd or people just probably thought this was really kind of stupid. He was only confined to his main book. Outside of the book was very sporadic. I mean, the only book he popped up in at this point was popped up in John Hickman's Avengers. Aside from that was this book. He also popped up, of course, he had his own team-up book with Superior Spider-Man Team-Up, which lasted for 12 issues, by the way. Let's see, he popped up in Morbius. He popped up in Venom. I'm trying to think where else he popped up. Yeah, I think that was it. By the way, he had a catchphrase. The die is cast. Yes, that was his catchphrase. By the way, oh yeah, and he also happened to wear, get this, Kitty Pryde, who was at the new Charles Xavier School Higher Learning, which, by the way, is the Weapon X Institute. Yes, and Wolverine does something really stupid. He talks Kitty Pryde and threatens to, and he pops up one of his claws right in her face. Yes. Yeah, this is how you know Wolverine's kind of acting out of character. And then you have Wolverine acting a little bit more out of character, acting a little more aggressive with a woman like this. Usually he's not this aggressive. Usually when he smiles like this, usually he's trying to kill somebody. But nope, he just tries to make out with a woman. Yep. Oh, yeah, he's here for these couple issues. And he also runs with Jubilee for these issues. Yep. Jubilee. Yep. She appears a lot in these issues. Starting with issue 3, she appears for a lot of this run. Yep. And there's a lot of like robots in these issues. And then you have Wolverine putting on this suit. Which, yeah, he keeps his suit. This is the suit he puts on. He gets it in issue 3 and wears this for the rest of the run. And then you have this group assembled by Sabretooth, which is comprised of Lord Deathstrike, the current Silver Samurai, who, by the way, is not the original, is actually his son, the beautiful Mystique, and here's Sabretooth wearing a suit. Now, you're thinking, why the heck would Graydon Creed wear a damn suit? Well, that's something Paul Cornell did with him. This is when he was still evil. And the way the artist draws his hands, he's freaking huge. Yeah. So, after Wolverine leaves the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning after the first few issues, then he joins up with Offer. Of course, he also has Kitty Pryde, which he's called on it. And the way these issues are built up, it's building up throughout from issues 5 through, and of course, then in issue 5, he has a tussle with Thor. Yes, Thor. And you're thinking like, okay, you're probably asking, what's up with the tattoo that's on Wolverine's arm? And why does he have it currently? Why does he have it currently? Don't know. It's never explained why. There is a reason why he wears his tattoo. It's a reminder of his first love, Rose, who, according to Wolverine, Jean Grey has a striking resemblance toward. And he runs into Rose briefly in this book. Yes, he does. Thanks to running into Lady Death, who kisses him. Yes, Lady Death is interested in Wolverine because he's about to die. Of course. Oh yeah, do you know what else pops up in these issues? I frickin' Deadpool. Yep. Yeah, and it's weird though he have Thor acting completely out of character. Even his arm looks different. Excuse me. Yeah, that's how the artist draws him. Yeah, don't blame Ryan Stegman for it. He actually had really good artwork for the book. Mm-hmm. They have the manager board job. This is actually, I think it's a 2-part, if I'm not mistaken. I think starting with issue, I think it was 7, I believe it was, where they actually built up, like what you see in the cover. Because, well, then you have, well, manager board job part 2, which is a nod to what happened in the early issues of Wolverine back in the 80s, when Wolverine became Patch, because he faked his death. This is weird art style, and of course, a guest appearance by Captain Britain. Yes, Captain Britain, of all people, teams with Wolverine. Which even that sounds very strange. Oh, I thought it was issue 7. Turns out it was issue 8 of this. Okay. Now, look at this cover. It's Wolverine popped up with stray claws. And every issue, like this issue up until the final issue, each claw disintegrates. That's how it looks at the start. And then, of course, then you have Wolverine meet up with Iron Fist, just relearn martial arts. Of course, this is all built to our rematch of Wolverine and Sabretooth happening in the issue, end of the volume. And then here's issue 2, like, oh gosh, like one of his claws just broke. And every subsequent issue, 10 breaks second claw, 11 breaks the third claw, and also, of course, the hand starts disintegrating. Yeah, but the final issue, before the annual, by the way, like, basically, and this is kind of gross, is this. I'm sorry if this image is... I apologize for the image, but that is the image that Marvel decided to go with for issue 12, which ended this whole run, which this is called The Last Wolverine Story, which had Wolverine had this 1-on-1 rematch with Sabretooth, which he won. Unlike in previous volume where he lost. And then after that, then came Death Wolverine miniseries right afterwards. And as for the 7th anniversary, just the Wolverine story done by Lee Wein. Now, as for who did the artwork for these early issues, now Ryan Stegman did issues 1 through 4, with of course David Bolden issue 4 as well. Now, Salvador Roca did that with having Garcia. Yeah, Garcia does, well, done by Salvador Roca. Mm-hmm. But yes, those are your artists for you. Actually, issue 5 is on by Joel Serrano. That's issues 5 through 7. 8 through 9 is Chris Anka. And Pete Willis is the last few issues. The end over discussed. Now, in the case of these issues themselves, they're actually pretty good. I do think that Paul Cornell did a great job serializing this whole story. And it's like each part is basically like a building block to this major story arc, building up toward Wolverine's ultimate death in Death Wolverine number 4. And he does a great job doing it. The only slight problem with Paul Cornell, he doesn't write Death Wolverine. That's Charles Shaw who does that. Now, the thing with Paul Cornell is people are kind of familiar with the guy because there are a lot of Doctor Who comics. And this is actually one of the very few non-Doctor Who comics I can think of he wrote. It's the only non-Doctor comic I can think of I read by him. But in the case of this book, it's actually pretty good. I'm going to give this book roughly a I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. It's a great job basically putting what was originally 2 volumes into one. I don't think the previous volume did this, but yeah. Moving on to Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, The Marvel Years, Volume 3. Yep. This contains issues 35 to 50 plus Storyteller, which is a one-shot that came out during this run that basically had Carol Danvers do like a fantasy type thing, which was really nice. The first 2 issues is building up toward Carol Danvers' death. Yep. It is called, like, basically these are your artists. Now, Brian Reed is the writer for this book. He writes pretty much the whole thing. And this book also contains not only 3550, but also the Storyteller one-shot and also Siege Spider-Man, which took place right after that. Now, Siege Spider-Man, which is written by Marco Santi, this was a one-shot that basically took place after each. I'm talking about this one first, because in this issue, it was very heavily hinted that Carol Danvers had feelings for Spider-Man. Yes, that. Like usual, it's one of those things Marvel never followed up with. I personally would not mind if Spider-Man hooked up with Carol Danvers. It actually would be an interesting idea. But no, they had him hook up with another blonde in the Marvel Universe very briefly, Mockingbird. Yeah, seriously, he dated Hawkeye's ex-wife for a few months. Don't know why, but that's basically what he did. By the way, the artist for these issues, the 35-37, Patrick Opie. 38, Rebecca Isaacs. For 39 to 40, 42, 44, and 46 is Sina Tanika. 41, 43, Sergio Areno. Phil Bronis does issue 45. 47 is done by Mike Bacone, Robert Savall, and Derek Donovan. 45 and 50, well, the first story is done by Sina Tanaka, and The Protector is done by, well, Michael Ryan. With a bunch of cover artists in here. Now, after the storybook special, which was really good here, and the way that Marvel drew Carol Danvers at this point, she was super muscular. Yes, this is how she looked as Miss Marvel. She was very muscular, and I could comment on her breast, per se, but you can kind of say that the way Marvel's treated her. Also, this book has got an obsession about Miss Marvel. What obsession is that? Frequent butt shots. Yes, both her and Carla Softon, they have a few issues of her being Captain Marvel, not Miss Marvel. The artist loves their rear end showing off constantly throughout all these issues. We have to have Carol Danvers show off her rear end to the audience. Now, first up, you have the death of Miss Marvel, which is something that's been hinted at for a while, where she deals with a case not exactly involving babies, like what happened later. We have stuff related to the Dark Reign, or she's basically just not going with. This is like right after the events of Dark Avengers issue 1, or she's trying to do her own thing, being Miss Marvel before. And they also build up to her death in issue 37. And she stays dead for a short period of time. Yeah, she's not dead very long. They also have her with a fling of hers, Michael Rossi, which this is never brought up again. Yep. And in issue 37, she dies. And then with issue 38, well, actually the end of the issue, we have Carla Softon who takes over the role. And she is Miss Marvel for several issues. This is basically her book now. Yeah, Carla Softon took over the book. And like with Carol, butt shot. Yep, love showing off that rear end. Because Carla Softon is hot. And one thing that the artist does not do, that Mike Deodato loved doing in the Dark Avengers book, in Dark Avengers, Mike Deodato had this obsession with drawing Norman Osborn like Tommy Lee Jones. Here he looks normal. Also, and I still remember this from the Dark Avenger files, where you have Victoria Hand doing all the profile of all the members of Dark Avengers. She has a special thing that she said about Carla Softon, where she wants to hop into bed with her. Yes, seriously, Victoria Hand. It seemed like the way it was written in that particular thing is that Victoria Hand wanted to have sex with Carla Softon because she's hot. Yep. And this issue here just deals with the whole thing with this otherworldly stuff. It's a weird thing, deal with the moonstone stuff in her body. And then 39 has basically a new artist, but I love this artwork. It's really gorgeous. Yeah, I think this is an artist who does come back now and again. This artwork is really good. You have her in the limelight. And you have no one else would have a loose case of Carol Danvers. And then we have this mysterious person. What is the purpose of this person? To build up a return of Carol Danvers. That's really the whole purpose of it. Yep. And of course, in this story arc, Deadpool's here. Yep, Deadpool's here. Now, does the story arc have a name? Let's see. It is technically, in a way, the first official story arc of, let's just say, Carla Softon as Miss Marvel. Yeah. Yeah, 38 was the start. Well, 37 was the first unofficial appearance of her. Was the first time she put on the costume per se, but yeah, it's a Dark Reign tie-in. Yep, and yeah, that's simply what it is. It's a Dark Reign tie-in that lasts for several issues. Let's see. This wraps up with issue number. If I can find the actual. Let's see. I think this wraps up with issue 44. Yes, that's where this particular thing wraps up. With a three-part known as The War of the Marvels, because Carol Danvers comes back from the dead after being dead for several issues. Yep, she came back in issue 41. Yep, she comes back in 41, and then of course Carol and Carla spend the next few issues beating the crap out of each other. Yes, seriously. And also, Wolverine and Spider-Man here, because Spider-Man, I get the reason why, because he was a recurring supporting character in the first one, so why the heck not? And plus, this does have something that will happen later on, right after she got resurrected. And I gotta say, this Dark Reign stuff is really good. I love the Dark Reign stuff. Brian Wood himself does an absolute fantastic job with this. There was also this woman named Carol Susan, who people thought, she thinks she wasn't Carol Danvers. Turned out she was. Yep. And, well, she doesn't like the fact that Carla basically took over the costume. Yeah. And, of course, Spidey, just, tries to... And, of course, you have this scene where you have Carol Danvers in the shower. Yep. I think it's supposed to be Carla Softon, but man, as a guy, ooh boy, ooh, a woman taking a shower. Yeah. Kind of wish you had more scenes like this often. We have this brawl with the Dark Avengers and these robots in this issue just cuz. Yep. Yeah, then we have 44, which is the finale for this whole thing. Yep, 44 is the finale, where basically Carla loses the identity of Miss Marvel to Carol Danvers, who is the real one. Well, actually, 45. I think 45 is the end of it. Yep. Yeah, they brawl for the next several issues, and I think it finally concludes with issue 45. I thought it was 45. Nope, I think it's actually 46. Yeah, this fight lasts for quite some time. They just brawl back and forth, and you have Carla give up the identity of Miss Marvel, become Moonstone again, and then Carol beats the crap out of her, takes Moonstone, but eventually she does get it back. Don't worry about that. And it's after issue 46. Excuse me. 47 is by far one of the most strangest issues of this whole run. Early on in the run, basically, Spidey requests to go on a date with Carol Danvers, In this issue, yeah, I remember the solicit. Carol Danvers does the most regrettable, basically goes on one of the worst issues ever made, going on a date with Spider-Man. Yep, and that's what she does for issue 47. Yeah, that's literally what this issue is, a date issue. Which, why not? It goes okay, despite it being attacked by terrorists, but it's okay issue. The last few issues are quite interesting. You want to know why? Because Carol Danvers' long-awaited rematch with Mystique for the first time since Avengers Annual number 10. That was the last time they officially met each other. And you're like, really? That was the last time Mystique ever fought Carol Danvers? Yes. And here's the strange thing about this. They never fight each other again. She basically beats the living Jesus out of her in one of these issues. And it's just quite hilarious, basically, when they meet up again. I think it's issue 49. Of course, this deals with the whole thing, return of a Captain Marvel, which is actually an imposter. And then you have Mystique, butt naked, just cause. Like, is it just me, or is it like we have another woman besides... I mean, first is Carla Soft that we see naked, now it's Mystique. And you gotta love this page here. Like, woman just walking by, she gets... It's like... And you have Carla's like, how's it going, Raven? And you have Mystique like, Danvers, son of a... Yep. And they brawl. And she's like, oh, don't pass on me. Why kick your butt? I thought this was so hilarious. And they fight. And of course, then she gets hauled to the police. And of course, and by the way, this cover here, this is a clear homage to Death of Captain Marvel. Yeah, it was published as Marvel Graphic Now #1, but that was the story, Death of Captain Marvel. Now, this is death of the original Captain Marvel, published in 1981, written and drawn by Jim Starlin. Excellent issue where Captain Marvel dies of cancer. Yep. Though, yeah, we have a visit of Captain Marvel, which is basically just a clone. And you have Carol just dealing with it. And I love this artwork. I kind of wish this artist would do more stuff with Marvel. You have Carol meet up with Spider-Man. And then after that, then we had this insert with the Protector, which this is when he first puts on the suit. This actually was technically his first appearance after his appearance in Dark Avengers in #1. Yep. And then, of course, after this, became part of the Avengers. Yep. And then, of course, they came the Siege one-shot, which was really good. I'm glad the fact they threw this in here because, well, it was next thing she was featured in right afterwards. Let me. Yeah. And here's the thing about this issue. This one-shot is pretty much the end of the time of Mike Gorgon as Venom. Of course, he does get brought up again as Venom, but yeah, that issue, that was the last time he actually was Venom. Yep, the last official time. Yep. But for the final issues of Carol Danvers' time as Miss Marvel in this series, this was good. Really good. I loved every issue of this thing. And I was reading this stuff when it was coming out, kind of in a way. Though I read this later on online a little bit later, but this book was just so good. I give this book a 10 out of 10. Final thoughts on this run? It's a good run. I'm surprised it ended 50 issues. Yes. Excuse me. Though here's the thing. When he had to become Captain Marvel in 2012 and in like 2017, 5 years later, when they decided to give Carol Danvers a legacy numbering, one of two female superheroes who got it, the other, of course, being She-Hulk. And they counted this volume and the previous volume as part of her numbering. And with the conclusion reviewing this book, that is everything for solo-wise for Carol Danvers until whenever the next trick comes out for the current volume of the series. I think it's out by now. I think it's called Strange Magic. Yeah, that's the last thing I got to review for Carol Danvers pre-recent. Yeah, it's a good volume. I do recommend checking it out. I'm surprised the fact that for the Brian Reed run, where it took up only 3 trades, Yeah, that's kind of surprising. It only took up 3 trades. Yeah, but I'm kind of happy the fact I was able to finish this up. Yep. Yeah. Now, if you're curious though about like, well, because I have reviewed the Epic Collection, which collected the original volume Miss Marvel from the '70s. I have covered that. Here's what else I've reviewed. Well, aside viewing that, well, I have not reviewed. Well, I've kind of reviewed some other work, like of the Epic Collection, which came out with the Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, and Heroes Born. Like that was like a big hardcover that collected like all appearances that she had. But these 3 books themselves, this is simply a combination of 9 volumes. Yes, 9 volumes. This one pretty much covered volumes 7 through 9. The very first volume, Captain Marvel Carol Danvers, The Marvel Years, that covered the first 3 volumes. Volume 2 covered 4 through 6, and this one was 7 through 9. Yep. And I have reviewed everything that came afterwards. Her first volume is Captain Marvel, her second, her third, everything. I have reviewed officially everything for Carol Danvers. All of her trades are done. Yeah, I don't think there's anything left for her to review until like whenever her new trade comes out. Yeah, I'm very proud of the fact that I have reviewed everything that featured Carol Danvers in a comic book. Well, for solo wise per se, yes. All of our solo stuff, all currently up to date. Which probably makes her the very first Marvel character who's still published this very day when I've covered everything. And if you're curious though, when this volume first started, this started back in 2005. They launched this in the aftermath of House of M of all things. And you're thinking, really? Yes, really. They launched this in 2005. I think it was like 2005, wasn't it? Actually, no, it was 2006. Yeah, like a year after House of M. And it was concluded in early 2010. Now, here's something you should know about the last couple issues. The last 2 issues were coming out at the same time that Siege was going on at the same time. Now, of course, after the book concluded, she was primarily featured in New Avengers as a primary character. She was one of the focus characters Bendis had in the book for pretty much over 2 years. And toward the end of the book, that's when it was acknowledged that she had taken up the identity of Captain Marvel just after the events of AVX. And then she has been part of the book ever since then. She was part of the book when Jonathan Hick was in the book, but when Wade wrote the book, she was not in the book at all. Though, after Wade left, Jason brought her back to the book, and she's about the book this very day. Carol Danvers was basically kept busy. Yes, it's like, so this book wrapped up, but put in New Avengers for a couple of years. Once that pretty much ran its course, before that she was given a new ongoing series as Captain Marvel, done by Kelly Hong, which I have reviewed that whole run. It's really good. The problem with the run was, after the original artist left the book, the artwork suffered, and the book got canceled. Yeah, that was the biggest problem when Carol Danvers became Captain Marvel. Apparently, Marvel just kept canceling it for like no reason. They canceled the original book after 17 issues, and the second book was simply just relaunched, #1, because of Secret Wars. And then she got more volumes afterwards. And currently, she's once again written by a female writer. Yeah, something I got pointed out about Carol Danvers. For the last 9 years, a majority of the time, the book is written by a woman. The only time I could think of where the book was written by a guy was when Christos Gage briefly wrote the book with his wife, Ruth Gage. Yep. When he briefly wrote with her, I think it was for the Civil War II issues, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. No, it was actually just before Civil War II. Yes. But a lot of the time women. Which, since this book ended, the Carol Danvers book has always been by a woman for the past 9 years. Only once, like I said, written by a guy. And Isn't that quite weird that Carol Danvers, a lot of time Rat Woman? Well, it's something different per se. And for one thing, this volume for Captain Marvel is longer than the last 2 volumes combined. Actually, that's several volumes. It's less over 30 issues. I have heard a rumbling that the current volume might end soon, but I hope not. Kelly Thompson has done a fantastic job with the book. And I think the book should continue, despite what's happening. Yep. So yes, that's it for Particular Review. And that's probably going to be a video today, unless, of course, I'm going to get into some more Super Sentai, okay? Next video. Bye.